Friends and viewers, let us talk today about myths and legend. And from the myths which I had chosen for you is a very wise and intelligent myth. This is a very interesting one. Also, the name of this I had chosen this from the Greek, and the name of this myth is Icarus and Daedalus. Daedalus, let me tell you, these were son and father. Daedalus was the father and Icarus was his son. So Daedalus is the Greek word for cunning worker. In the Greek mythology, the place of Daedalus was of an artisan, sculptor, and architect, and the figure largely in the legions of Crete. So let me tell you about this myth. Among all these mortals, among these people who grow so wise that they learn the secrets of the god, none was more cunning than Daedalus. Daedalus was a clever man. He once built for King Minos of Crete a wonderful labyrinth of winding ways to cunningly tangled and twisted around that once inside, you could never find your way out again without a magic clue. But the king favor got against like a wind against the Daedalus, and one day he had his master architect imprisoned in the tower. He was imprisoned. Daedalus managed to escape from his cell, but it seemed impossible to leave the island. But he cannot leave the island, since every ship that came to that island or went was well guarded by the order of the king. At length, watching the seagulls, those birds in the air, the only creature that were sure of liberty, he thought of a pain for himself and his young son Icarus, who was captive with him. Little by little, he gathered a store of feather, great and small. He fastened these together with thread, molded them with the wax, and so fashioned two great wings like those of a bird, two birds. Then they were done. Daedalus fitted them on his shoulder, and after one or two effort, he found that by his waving his arms, he could winnow the air and cleave it. It was as a swimmer does in the sea. He held himself aloof, wavered his way, and with the wind, and at last, like a great fledgling, he learned to fly. Without delay, he fell to work on a pair of wings for the boy Icarus and taught him carefully how to use them, bidding him beware of rash adventure among the stars. He advised his son to use this wing, this fly, very careful. Don't go above too much above the sky, and be careful from the rush wind. Remember, said the father, never to fly very low or very high, for the fogs about the earth would weigh you down, but the blaze of the sun, the heat of the sun, will surely melt your feather apart if you go too near the sun. For Icarus, this caution went in at one ear and out by the other. Who could remember to be careful when he was to fly? For the first time, Icarus was a young man. He started to enjoy the flying. For first, are birds careful? He thought with himself. Not they. Not an idea remained in the boy's head. Whatever his father advised him, those ideas never remained in his head, but the joy of escape. The day came, and the fair wind that was to set them free. The father bird put on his wings, and while the light urged them to be gone, he waited to see that all was well with Icarus, for the two could not fly hand in hand. Up they rose to the sky, the boy after his father. The hateful ground of Crete sank beneath them, and the country folk who caught a glimpse of them when they were high above the tree tops took it from a vision of the gods, Apollo, perhaps with a Cupid after him. At first there was a terror in the joy. The wide vacancy of the air dazed them. A glance downward made their brains reel. But when a great wind filled their wings, and Icarus felt himself sustained like a hollycorn bird in the hollow of a wave, like a child uplifted by his mother, he forget everything in the world but joy. He forget Crete and the other island that he has passed over. He saw but vaguely that winged thing in the distance before him that was his father, Daedalus. He longed for one draught of flight to quench the thirst of his captivity. He stretched out his arm to the sky and made toward the highest heaven, and the car started to fly above and high beside the cautious and beside the instruction of his father. He had forgotten the instruction of his father. Alas for him, warmer and warmer grew the air. Those arms that seemed to uphold him relaxed. His wings wavered, dropped. He fluttered his young hands vainly. He was falling. The heat of the sun started to melt the wax that kept those two feathers together, and he was falling. And in the terror he remembered the heat of the sun had melted the wax from his wings. The feathers were falling one by one like a snowflakes, and there was none to help. He fell like a leaf tossed down by the wind, down and down with one cry that overtook Daedalus far away. His father was watching him from above the sky when his son fell under the sea. When he returned and sought high and low for the poor boy, he saw nothing but bird-like feather afloat on the water. And he knew that Icarus was drowned. The nearest island he named Icaria in the memory of the child, but in the heavy grief went to the temple of Apollo in Sicily, and there hung up his wings as an offering. Never again did he attempt to fly. So this is the story of Icarus and Daedalus, those father and son, how his wise father had instructed and advised his son not to go far, not to fly up more above and near to the sun, but his son, because he was a son, he had forgotten all the advice of his father, and he had met his end. His wing was shattered, as the wax was melted from the heat of the sun, and he fell into the sea, and he was drowned. So this is the story of Icarus and Daedalus, the Greek legend and myths. And this is also a very lessonable story for all those young people who neglect the advice of their elders. Thank you very much.